Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, the story I have for you today is basically one big nut, because it is full of the twists and the turns. See, in the year 2009, a woman named Quinn Gray, she went missing. She lived in Florida, so, that should give you an idea of what this story will be like. See, one day her husband got a call, and when people rushed to the Gray family home, their big old mansion left behind was one sinister note. People were frantic, the authorities were on the case, there were money drops. But as we see time and time again, things weren't quite, what they seemed. They were a lot weirder, in a way I don't think anybody could have seen coming. And I include, us in that. So before we get into this one, please subscribe to see new videos from this lad every week. Now, let's give this crazy tale a go. So, good buddies, this tale takes us to one Ms. Gray. Morally so, I guess you could also say, and that's Quinn Gray. The place Ponte Vedra, uppity Florida, the year 2009, if you can believe that. Ponte Vedra Beach is a wealthy seaside community about a half-hour's drive from downtown Jacksonville. It's a tourist spot, a place with beautiful beaches, people, and resorts. The population, 27,000, skews a little older, with better schools, and of course the houses cost top dollar. Reading up on the town, this line from Wikipedia stuck out to me. The ratio of registered sex offenders to the number of residents in the community is lower than the state average. Great. It's friendly, it's safe. It's the kind of place where you wouldn't really expect what happened to happen. But also, I suppose you kind of would. Because if you're gonna kidnap and ransom someone, there's not that many deadbeats in Ponte Vedra Beach is what I'm saying. You'd have to work hard to kidnap someone who had nothing. So, in September 2009, a gang, they made the right choice. Our story begins on the 4th of September 2009. That would be Labor Day weekend. The beach is full in Ponte Vedra, but one house empty. A businessman named Reed Gray was calling the police. See, around 5 p.m. that Friday, Reed, he'd been at work, and he had received a call from his wife saying that she had been taken by a gang of Albanians. Now, Reed, he didn't have the particular set of skills that would, whatever shit Liam Neeson says, he went straight to the police.
This is the sheriff's office. My wife made a phone call to me a minute ago. Call phone to say that she was held by gunpoint. Did he tell you where she was at? No. There's a note at the house with the gunman's demand. Said, if you call the police, they will shoot me dead. It could be 3:30 plump, but the gun's a gun, man.
Reed and Quinn Gray had been married for 9 years, since October 2000, having 2 young daughters together. Quinn had trained as a nurse, but had given that up to be a full-time mother, while Reed, he owned his own business selling medical equipment. Reed and Quinn, they lived in a beautiful, $4.5 million beachfront property, on Ponte Vedra Beach. They had just recently moved from Jacksonville Beach. But now that house was empty. 37-year-old Quinn Gray was gone, and Reed, he went straight to the St. John's Sheriff's Office, while the police entered his home. The house was eerily quiet. The 2 daughters were in school, and there were no major signs of violence or disturbance. But on the table, a ransom note. It looked like the kidnappers had forced Quinn to write it herself. Dear Reed, I need you to read this and be calm. If you call the police, it's over for me. Reed, do not be a hero. This is professional, and there are 3 men holding me right now, and they want $50,000 cash. They need it by tomorrow. You cannot get more than $9,500 at one place, so 4 different banks. They are not going to hurt me if you give them the money. there is a GPS on your car, and they know your every movement. So please do not do anything stupid. No cops. Well, shit indeed was hitting the fan. It was very movie-like. In fact, the whole situation was. But it was also very real, as was the fear of whatever Quinn was going through right now.
Quinn said that there's somebody with a gun pointed at her head. Not going to be able to work, sleep, eat, breathe until this is resolved.
Do you know where she's at right now?
No.
See, Quinn had wrote that the reason the ransomers, the kidnappers, were demanding 50 grand was because Reed had borrowed 50 grand from a loan shark. Now, when asked about this, Reed would say, no, I don't know any loan sharks. I'm earning over $1 million a year. I wouldn't need to borrow money from a loan shark. 50 grand was also a very low amount of money for a guy like Reed. You know, his business was very successful. So that particular amount of money they were asking was odd. And Reed knew no one who would do something like this. No stalkers, he hadn't heard anything strange going on, hadn't been followed lately. They would have no knowledge who would have anything in for them. God only knew, though, who had Quinn, where she was, and what they were doing to her. After a long night of unknowns, the following morning, Quinn called Reed.
What do I need to do?
I'll call you back. I don't know. I'm going to call you back, okay?
Alright, I love you.
She said, "Will call me back in a few minutes."
45 minutes later, she called again.
Hello?
When did you put your phone faster?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I've been tied up all night long. What the f*** is wrong with you? You need to get in the car with the money and go down Cutler Boulevard and take a left on South
I gotta write this down. You can't.
No, just this. No, please. Down Cutler Boulevard, take a left. You got the dogs. They're going to get me too.
Hello? She got really upset, started screaming, saying I'm tied up. And she goes, "You got the cops. They know they're going to kill me." She, for the first time, was screaming, crying, saying they've got me tied up. Help.
So the money drop was on, to pay the kidnappers and get Quinn back. Or so the kidnappers thought, because the police immediately went to that location and were like, yeah, you ain't getting away. But Quinn, she called again a third time, changing the location.
Take those convertible tops down and just wait in the Chick-fil-A parking lot.
I want to see you. I want to exchange you for the money. I am not giving them money without you. Hello?
They spotted 3 Fed cars near Chick-fil-A, so I don't know where I'm going now. You need to wait for more instructions.
But, when it was all set up, it seems like these Albanian kidnappers, they had made the police. They had spotted them, and so nothing happened that day. So, day 1 with Quinn gone, multiple attempts to have some kind of ransom drop-off, but nothing happened. It seems they were on to Reed and the police. I mean, from the start they had said no cops, and it seems like, they knew there were cops in it right away. Because later on that day, after the 2 failed drop-off attempts, Reed was going home with some of the police, and he got a text, basically from Quinn's phone, saying, we're watching you, we can see you're there with the cops. These guys, it seems like Quinn was right, these guys were professional. Every time they called, they got Quinn, to call Reed. Presumably Quinn had a gun to her head. The calls never lasted long enough to be traced, and when the phone wasn't in use, the battery was removed. So the police could never actually, ping where they were, where they had Quinn. Almost 100 cops would be on the case of the kidnapping, but it seems like these kidnappers were always one step ahead. The following morning, the Sunday, Quinn had been taken on the Friday, the kidnappers texted Quinn's mother from Quinn's phone. Now they're asking the mother to do their drop-off. It seems like, after multiple failed attempts, the previous day they were like, Reed, So the police were now with her. She agreed, she would drop the money off, for another time at a drop-off. She put the money in a blue bag. The bag was only 10 grand, not 50 grand, because the police don't negotiate with terrorists. They also had put the police had put a GPS tracker in the bag with the money. The kidnappers had texted Quinn's mother saying to go to the beach, to go to this public restroom at the beach, and she would find more instructions. She did.
So far, I'm fine. No harm has been done to me. After you pick up this letter, you are going to drive north toward Joe's Craft Shack, grab the money out of the car Do not look back. Anything goes wrong, and I'm dead.
She went inside, and inside a toilet paper holder was a note. She drove to Joe's crab shack, followed by many undercover cops and helicopters, and she dropped the money off. And the police were watching to see who grabbed the bag. After a couple of minutes, a group of men actually walked by. They looked at the bag, they went over to it, they kicked it, and these men picked up the bag of money, put it in the back of their car, and drove off. They then started driving weirdly, like in circles and stuff, as if to check if they were being followed. All eyes were on this car. I mean, clearly the kidnappers, right? Who else would just be a group of men walking by and would grab that bag? Then a couple of minutes later, Quinn's mother, Gail, got a call from Quinn saying, "Where's the money?" So the police pulled over the people who had taken the bag of money. And it was tourists. It was some German tourists. They just saw it and they picked it up for the crack. They'd even called the police saying, "Hey, we just found a load of money here." Scheisse. So this whole ransom plot was not going well. Quinn's life was in the balance, and there had been like 3 attempts at this point to do a money drop-off. There would be a 4th later on that day, but the kidnappers never showed. This is like the worst ransom. It seems like the ransomers, though, were just one step ahead, as I said. Every time they would just get spooked. They knew that if they tried and attempted, they'd be taken immediately. So they never went through with it. Each time, though, as you can imagine, Quinn's family are getting more and more frantic that something will happen.
I did not get the money. My partner did not get the money. Nobody from us has the money. Did you hear that?
What?
Did you hear that round?
The what?
Did you hear the round I just fired?
No, my God, I didn't hear the round you just fired. No.
Okay, well listen. Your daughter is fine. She just talked to you. Keep it up.
I know. Well, if I heard a round, you let me talk to her again.
Listen.
Yes.
I'm sick and tired of it. Okay. I'm sick and tired of it. Reed has been giving me left and right.
Reed's been giving you...
Tuesday morning, he's going to go to the bank. He's going to pick up $50,000, and we'll arrange something else to meet.
Later, an image was emailed to Reed, a picture of Quinn. Proof, I guess, that she was still alive. Now the police, they could use metadata from that image to find out where it had been taken, but it was a dead end. There was nothing there. It was then the following day that things broke open.
Okay, and so you've been missing for 4 days? Yes, there's something about that. I didn't know that. I was in the room. And tied up to a chair with duct tape and tied. There's nothing in there, just duct tape and tied.
The kidnappers dropped her off. She had been let out of a white van, and she told 911 what had happened. She had been let go, no money exchanged, and she was hysterical. So what the shit just happened over the last 3 days? Well, Quinn, she was grateful to be alive, but she was blaming her husband for what happened. That, if he'd only paid, she would have been let go ages ago. Thing was, Reed had wanted to pay from the very beginning. He was earning a lot of money, it wouldn't have been much to him, and he wanted his wife back. But it was the police, who were like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. They were like the ones who were setting boundaries, essentially. But Quinn was now hinting at maybe he had something to do with it. Maybe he wanted the kidnappers to kill her. Though there are much easier ways to do it. But the police themselves and Gail, Quinn's mother, felt maybe he was involved. He had been acting just kind of odd. And what was also really odd was that just before that Labor Day weekend, Reed had taken out two life insurance policies.
I feel like my husband wanted me dead, 100%. Feel that there is a very dark and sinister side to my husband that I always sense in a way.
Do you have anything to do with her disappearance?
No, 100% no.
But the police had been watching Reed like a hawk the entire weekend. He never really went out of character or was suspicious. So Quinn told the police what happened.
Do you feel okay? Do you feel like you're able to talk and get this out? So go back to, you wake up Friday.
Okay.
Tell me your day Friday.
It was just a normal, absolutely normal day.
She said she'd been doing errands all day, But when she came home, this guy with a handgun, suddenly appeared and took her.
Look on his face and the evil in his eyes. I was like, I'm dead. Has a gun to my head, and I mean, I'm screaming bloody murder. Screaming. I'm actually really surprised that someone didn't hear me. But unfortunately, I don't have neighbors on either side of me. He just kept telling me, your husband borrowed money from a loan shark. You never heard of a loan shark? He was very sarcastic. He was constantly saying sarcastic comments and about rich people and stuff like that. And why would, your husband, I'm like, I don't understand why he would borrow $50,000 from a loan shark. He makes plenty of money.
She was then tied up and taken into a van. She was eventually taken to a warehouse or garage, tied to a chair and duct taped up. She said she'd been sexually assaulted and left on the floor of the warehouse.
And I acted like I enjoyed it, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I almost did.
Listen, it's not unusual to have weird feelings and weird thoughts going through your head when you're exposed to a massive amount of trauma.
Then she was taken to a motel and had a gun to her head to make those calls.
And so we're waiting for her, and then finally see her car. I'm like, well, go, let's follow her. And right before she starts to make her turn, he turns off to the left and is going to go wait in a parking lot or something. He's driving off. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, at this point, I'm in a complete panic because I'm like, now I don't even know who's telling the truth. If the drop was made, he leaves. He's like, there's a cop car, 3 cars behind me. I'm like, what are you doing? We have to see where she dropped it. So then it's after that we make the phone call, and she says, I put an M&M bag where I dropped the money. And he's like, you think I'm gonna go back there? There's heat all over that place. And I'm just like, I'm distraught. There's 2 drops missed. I'm totally at this point.
Something weird was that, remember, she had initially said it was three men that had kidnapped her. But now she was saying it was only one guy the entire time. She never saw anyone other than this lad. But at one point, Quinn said this guy had bought her food, and she could remember the time and where he had gotten it from. So the police were able to follow up with CCTV and saw it was this guy. Quinn agreed that was the kidnapper, as did the motel clerk where Quinn said they had stayed. And so that was put on the news, this CCTV footage. Anybody know this guy? Anybody see him? Kidnapping suspect number uno. And then he called in.
How can I help you? I need to talk to somebody about, I was buying something in Publix and my picture appeared for some kind of woman kidnapping or something like that. Is that you? I'm actually on my way over there to you guys. What is your name, sir? Jasmine Osmanovic.
A car mechanic from Bosnia. No record, well educated, coming from an upstanding family. He told the police he went in, he voluntarily interviewed, and he said he didn't have a clue what was going on. He said they must have the wrong guy. Maybe that was him in the CCTV, but he didn't have anything to do with any kidnapping ransom plot at all. He said he had an alibi for the night Quinn was taken. He said he went to a bar, he met a girl named Stacy, they had a few drinks together, and then they essentially had a 2-night stand.
Do you recognize her?
Sir, I mean, she looks like a blonde chick.
He didn't look at that picture and say, I don't know this one.
Sir, she doesn't look like anybody that I know.
Okay.
He didn't have a clue who Quinn was, even when confronted with pictures of her. He was like, no. Like, they were like, is this Stacy? And he was like, no, that's not her. He was denying it, but the police weren't buying it.
Okay, so what did I do?
She is saying that you abducted her.
Abducted her?
Yes, sir. I have more than enough evidence to charge you based on her word. And for you to say that you don't even know her concerns me greatly, Jasmine. Concerns me greatly. Because this woman, I can assure you, bud, knows you.
Okay, she says she knows me.
Absolutely. And I know she knows you. And I know you know her.
Okay, sir. I told you everything that I had to tell you.
You were at the hotel with her Saturday and Sunday night.
With her?
Yes. And I'm not going on her word. I'm going on the clerk's word. What's the chances of you and her staying in the same hotel in the same room at the same time? And not knowing each other? What's the chances of that, Jasmine?
And then eventually said, okay, maybe she looks like someone I might know, but I didn't kidnap or ransom anyone. And in fact, he said he had a tape recording to prove it. See, Quinn and Reed's marriage wasn't great. It was not great at all. In fact, it had been on the rocks for some time, with multiple infidelities on both sides. Reed had been having affairs with women, as had Quinn. Quinn also had a drinking problem. She'd be all the time out. She was all the time out partying while he was left alone. She's partying with loads of men. She would come in drunk loads of times, and Reed would check her handbag and find her underwear was in her handbag. She was having a grand old time. Reed had moved out for a couple of weeks out of the family home. They tried separating, but they eventually got back together. And at one point, Quinn demanded Reed pay off her car and give her 50 grand, and she would start again. Eventually, the police got the tape Jasmine said he had. And it was a tape Jasmine himself had secretly recorded, only he knew about it until now, of what he'd been up to that weekend.
We've been staying in at the Emerson Inn on room 207. She stayed the whole night by herself. She didn't want me to stay with her, so I'm going right now back to there.
I don't know what the name of is.
I'll see.
Just tell me you have one.
They call the cops and everything. But I got a different plan. They just knew you were here by yourself all night long. They would have a fit.
That's why I'm starting to feel like I'm the censor one. And this is my family. I wonder what my girls think right now. That they don't have a what's going on. Anyone in their wildest dreams would think that I could come to something like this.
That's why you're working with me.
So nervous. I'm gonna have to have a few more marks if I'm telling these stories, don't you think? I'm gonna be hysterical, don't worry. Because the minute I'm back into the real world without the safety net of you, I'm gonna be freaking out. When this is all over, I have your word.
What?
Whatever story we come up with, you stick to it.
We both have to stick to the same story.
Yeah, so the tape recorded Quinn and Jasmine riding all weekend.
Does Reed get this much action?
You know he does it.
Hot diggity, where's the lotion? See, Jasmine was Quinn's lover. Had been for a while after they met at a gas station. Jasmine had secretly recorded their passionate weekend together because he had a feeling that Quinn would throw him under the bus, as she had done. So he was right. It was good that he recorded it. Jasmine was arrested for extortion. The next day, Quinn Gray was too.
Step up.
You wouldn't make it up because it's the truth.
I'm talking about him. Why would he make this up?
Because he's a criminal and he came in and tried to extort $50,000 from me and tried to take me. Take me.
What do you have to say to all the people that have been behind you and that have been worried about your safety?
Thank you for your support.
Wait, what happened?
What do you want to say to your family? Do you have an apology to your
I
family?
love you and I hope to see you soon.
She pleaded not guilty, said this was bullshit. She was a victim here. Reed, stuck by her. Oddly enough. This is Sherry Papini all before again.
But let us begin with a bizarre story out of Florida. A mother claimed that she was kidnapped, tied up, and held for ransom. But now police believe it was all a scheme. That woman's lawyers are with us exclusively. We'll talk to them in a moment.
Even the sheriff in Florida says this case reads like a novel with allegations of sex, lies, and extortion. Gray was arrested last month for trying to extort $50,000 from her husband, a successful business owner who makes upwards of $70,000 a month.
If I wanted $50,000, all I would do is take it out of the bank account.
Also arrested, this man, 25-year-old Bosnian immigrant Jasmine Osmanovic, now jailed on extortion charges. Authorities say Gray and Osmanovic had prepared their scheme for weeks. In more than 100 pages of recently released court documents, investigators say Gray and Osmanovic stayed at several locations, including this Jacksonville motel, where the manager says they looked like boyfriend and girlfriend.
There were chances for her to escape. Several occasions she could have taken off. How do you explain that?
Well, I think it's important to note now, Matt, that the prosecution and the sheriff don't necessarily share the same opinion about what happened that weekend. But the bottom line is Quinn Gray on Labor Day weekend of this year was kidnapped during the midst of a manic phase of her bipolar disorder. Her reaction to the kidnapping, it may seem bizarre, but it's all explained by her mental illness.
So Quinn and Reed, too, I guess, said this was all Jasmine's idea and that Quinn had gone criminally insane, that's her words, over the weekend, and that Jasmine had just manipulated her, taken advantage of her, and, she was really a victim here, too. She didn't know what she was doing, and all that sort of shite. Quinn had bipolar disorder and had recently been in treatment for alcoholism, and so they said, well, here, listen, that just makes her very vulnerable, and then this, wisecracking, highly intelligent gas station employee named Jasmine from Bosnia came over, and he just, was in there, like swimwear, really, orchestrating the whole plot. Yeah, her defense were really doing backflips over here, trying to make that tape not sound like it sounded. Jasmine would plead guilty to extortion, and he was sentenced to 6 years probation and ordered to pay $43,000 to the sheriff's office. That was half the cost of the investigation. Quinn pleaded no contest to the charge of threats or extortion, and she was sentenced to 7 years probation. She also had to pay back the other half of the investigation. In 2010, Quinn and Reed divorced shortly after the whole ordeal. See, Reed had Quinn do a private polygraph, and I guess he was not too happy with the results. And so ends one of the strangest plots I've ever covered. I mean, both, Jasmine and Quinn are out today. They've served their probation and they did their time. It might actually be the strangest plot I've ever covered, the fake kidnapping gag, and then throwing your co-conspirator under the bus. Oh no, it was real. I mean, it was a good thing Jasmine actually secretly recorded their time together, because otherwise, there would be no proof that Quinn was involved in this whole shenanigans. A very odd plot of extortion, ransom, kidnapping, all self-imposed. Though Quinn, even though she pleaded no contest, still said she was kidnapped, and that she was manipulated into whatever wrong things she did or said. I mean, I'd probably say the same if my, sex tape had been leaked to the press. Oh yeah, someone took advantage of me. I was criminally insane. Unfortunately, it didn't work. She should have just divorced him, though. God knows she probably would have gotten a lot more than 50 grand out of him, as he was quite wealthy. I guess now she kind of has nothing. Who knows what goes through idiots' heads, though? Why don't I just think of the obvious, which is always divorce. I guess nothing goes through your heads most of the time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here with me. Yeah, hope you found this story interesting. I guess that kind of wraps things up. So here, listen, go on. Watch more of my videos. Sure, why not? And I'll see you as always real soon in the next old video. But you know what? Until then, please look after each other. Look after yourselves. Because I love you. Mike out.